Hey there, deep divers. Today, we're diving into a story that sounds like, I don't know, something you'd see in a movie, not real life. Operation Underworld.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those head-scratcher moments in history.
They were talking World War II,
Uh-huh.
the U.S. Navy,
Right.
and get this, a partnership with the Mafia
Ma.
to protect New York City. I mean, come on, it sounds crazy.
It does sound crazy, but, and this is what's so fascinating, it's completely true. We're going to really dig deep into this whole world of, well, wartime espionage, really. And lucky for us, we have this incredible book. You actually sent this one in, didn't you?
I did, and I have to say, when I first saw it, I thought, the Navy teamed up with the MOB.
Yeah, right. Someone's pulling my leg.
Uh-huh, yeah, I could see that. But no, this book lays it all out, the whole
Yes.
thing. It's wild. And it all starts with, well, this very real fear of Nazi sabotage right here in the U.S.
Absolutely. The year is 1942, the war's in full swing, and German U-boats, they're wreaking havoc in the Atlantic, picking off Allied ships left and right.
Yeah, like shooting fish in a barrel, almost.
Exactly. The Navy, they knew they had to secure the New York harbor. I mean, it was a prime target. But there was a slight problem.
And that problem was?
They needed eyes and ears everywhere, especially on the waterfront, people who could tell them what was going on, who belonged, who didn't, intel.
Makes sense. But how do you even begin to get that kind of access? It's not like you can just, like,
Oh,
post
right.
an ad in the paper, right? Seeking spies, waterfront experience a plus.
Well, you're right, that wouldn't work. The Navy, they were stuck. Traditional methods, out the window. They needed someone, maybe someone who already had that insider knowledge, someone who could move around unnoticed, particularly in the shadier parts of the city.
Hold on, are you saying what I think you're saying?
I think I am.
They turn to the Mafia.
Bingo. It's like something straight out of a movie, Rado.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Okay, but how? Who even makes the first move in a situation like this?
Well, that's where it gets even more interesting. So we have this Navy lieutenant, Charles Haffenden, and he's tasked with basically making the harbor airtight. And he knew, like we were just saying, traditional methods, forget it, they wouldn't cut it. He needed someone who knew the underworld, someone who could move through it like a ghost.
And that's where our friend the mob comes back into the picture.
You got it. The Navy, they reached out to, get this, a district attorney, William Hogan. Turns out he'd had a few run-ins with organized crime in the past.
Oh, I bet.
And get this, he suggests they talk to Joseph Sox Lanza.
Sox Lanza.
Yeah, Sox Lanza. This guy was the big cheese, the top dog down at the Fulton Fish Market. I mean, he knew every single thing that was going on down on those docks. If anyone could help the Navy navigate that world, it was him.
Okay, so they got this name, the Sox Lanza. What do? Just call him up? Send a telegram? How does the Navy even begin to have a conversation with a mob boss, especially when they're, not exactly on the best of terms to begin with?
It's a good question. They couldn't exactly waltz up to his door and make him an offer, right? It had to be, well, discreet. They needed a middleman, someone who could, speak both languages, law enforcement, and, well, let's just say organized business.
Intriguing. So who is their go-between?
That's where Assistant District Attorney Murray Griffing steps in. His job, keep everyone talking, make sure nobody gets spooked, and make sure things actually moved forward. Think of him as a diplomatic intermediary in a very, very delicate situation.
That is one high-pressure job. Okay, so they finally get Lanza to the table. What do they say? Hey, so we're trying to put guys like you away, but we need your help winning a war.
It wasn't quite that blunt, I imagine, but yeah, it was a delicate dance for sure. Basically, the Navy, they offered Lanza a deal. Help us protect the waterfront and, well, let's just say certain indiscretions might be overlooked. Remember, Lanza wasn't exactly squeaky clean himself. He had his own legal troubles brewing.
Wait, hold on. So they want to strike a deal with a guy who's already in trouble with the law?
You're getting it.
This is unbelievable. What was Lanza thinking?
Well, for a guy like Lanza, this was an opportunity, right? Think about it. By helping the Navy, he could spin himself as, well, a patriot.
Wow.
And that could definitely help with his legal situation, not to mention his public image.
I mean, I guess it's a win-win.
Well, not so fast. This
Yeah.
was a huge gamble. The stakes were incredibly high. But the potential payoff? Well, that was huge, too.
You're telling me, okay, so they got Lanza on board. What happens next? Do they give him a badge, a secret handshake, swear him in?
It wasn't quite as official as all that. It was all built on trust, or at least a shared understanding that if this went south, it would be bad for everyone.
High stakes all around.
Exactly. So Lanza, using his network, remember those connections, he starts recruiting informants from all over the docks. Mostly, it was the Italian fishing crews. And they became the Navy's eyes and ears, reporting anything that seemed off.
So instead of sailors, they had, like, fishermen spies.
In a way, yeah. And you know what? It worked. These fishermen, they knew those waters like the back of their hands. Nobody could pull anything over on them. An unfamiliar face, a shady deal going down, suspicious activity around a ship. They saw it all. And that information, well, it was priceless for the Navy.
Wow. This is incredible. Okay, so Lanza's playing ball. He's got his informants in place. But, and I think this is the million-dollar question, was he really doing it all for Uncle Sam?
Ah, there you go again, asking the tough questions. And you're right to be skeptical. Lanza, remember, he always had his own agenda, this alliance. It was risky, even for him, and he wasn't afraid to use it to his advantage.
I knew there had to be more to this story, and I have a feeling this is just the tip of the iceberg. What happens next? Okay, so we've got the Navy. They're relying on these mob informants to, keep things safe on the waterfront.
Right. Yeah.
And if that wasn't wild enough, they've got these secret teams, these ferret squads.
Yeah, the ferret squads.
Some of them, it sounds like, plucked straight from the underworld, breaking into foreign consulates. I mean, talk about a recipe for disaster.
It definitely had the potential to go south fast.
So what happens next? Does the whole thing blow up in their faces?
Well, it almost did, but not quite in the way you might expect.
Oh.
Remember those German spies? The ones we talked about earlier? The ones potentially planning sabotage?
Yeah, the ones who are supposed to be blowing up bridges and, generally causing chaos. What about them?
Well, as luck would have it, one of them, he got cold feet.
Hold on, really? A change of heart. For a Nazi spy, what happened? Did he have some kind of crisis of conscience? See the error of his ways?
Well, let's just say that self-preservation might have played a role. This spy, his name was George Dash, and he was, well, starting to panic, really. He knew the risks and the potential consequences if he failed. They were, let's just say, not good.
So what did he do? Turn himself in?
He went straight to the FBI, surrendered himself, offered up a whole treasure trove of information, names, targets, plans, you name it. Everything the FBI needed to basically shut the whole Nazi spy ring down.
Wow. Talk about a turn of events.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole sabotage plot, it was foiled because one of the bad guys got scared?
You got it. Goes to show even the best laid plans, right? But you're right, it does make the whole Operation Underworld thing a bit less urgent, I guess.
I mean, yeah, if the immediate threat is gone, then what?
Exactly. The Navy, they had to reassess. Was this whole alliance, this risky partnership with the Mafia, was it really worth the trouble? Especially with someone like Lanza involved.
And let's not forget about Haffenden. He's the one who set this whole thing in motion. What happened to him?
Yeah, Haffenden, well, he was, how should I put this? Effective, yes, but maybe a little too unorthodox for the Navy's liking.
What do you mean?
His methods, they raise a few eyebrows, let's just say that. And his reliance on the mob, that didn't exactly win him any friends in high places.
So after all that, after all the risks he took, they just, pushed him aside?
Let's just say his superiors weren't exactly lining up to give him a medal. He was quietly reassigned. His role in the whole thing pretty much swept under the rug.
Talk about thankless.
Yeah.
So what about Lanza? Did he ever have to, face the music?
Lanza's luck, it eventually ran out. Remember those legal troubles he had brewing?
Yeah.
They caught up with him. All that talk about patriotism didn't really help him in court. He was convicted, ended up behind bars.
Wow, what a mess. But what about the mastermind behind it all? Lucky Luciano. He was calling the shots from prison, right? Did he get what he wanted?
Luciano, he was a smart guy, always thinking a few steps ahead. He used this whole Operation Underworld thing, spun it to his advantage, argued that, hey, he helped protect America, right? Maybe he deserved a shorter sentence, a gesture of good faith.
And they bought it.
Well, let's just say he knew how to play the game. He ended up getting clemency, and there's always a but, isn't there?
Always. What was the catch?
He was deported back to Italy.
Wow. So back to where it all began. Did he just pick up where he left off? Back to his old tricks?
Let's just say Luciano, even in exile, he was still a force to be reckoned with. His influence had stretched across the ocean. He cemented his legacy as, one of the most notorious gangsters, maybe of all time.
Okay, so where were we? Oh, yeah. The Navy's working with the mob.
Yeah.
They've got their fishermen informants. They've got these covert ferret squads breaking into consulates. It's like, I don't know, a bad spy film.
It does sound kind of crazy when you put it all together like that.
So what happens next? Does this whole house of cards come crashing down?
Well, it almost did, but not quite the way you'd expect.
Oh. Oh, so
Remember those German spies?
yeah.
The ones who were supposed to be, causing mayhem?
Yeah, the sabotage crew. What about them?
Well, it turns out that one of them, well, he had a change of heart. Or at least a change of plans.
Wait, really? What? Did he suddenly develop a taste for apple pie and decide America wasn't so bad after all?
Haha. Not quite. It was a bit more, shall we say, self-serving than that. His name was George Dash. And he was, well, terrified. He'd gotten in way over his head and he knew it.
What did he do?
He went to the FBI, spilled the beans, the whole thing. Names, dates, targets, everything.
Wow. Talk about an unexpected turn. So the big Nazi sabotage plot, the whole reason behind Operation Underworld, it was all, what, foiled because one guy got spooked?
Pretty much. I guess it goes to show that even the most well-thought-out plans can fall apart, sometimes in the most unexpected ways.
So what happens to Operation Underworld after that?
Well, the Navy, they had a bit of a dilemma on their hands. The immediate threat, at least as far as they knew, was neutralized, right?
Right.
So they had to ask themselves, was this whole thing with the Mafia, was it really worth the risk? Especially with someone like Lanza involved.
Good point. And what about Haffenden? The guy who set this whole thing up.
Yeah.
What happens to him?
Haffenden, he was, well, let's just say he wasn't exactly the Navy's golden boy anymore. Effective, sure, but his methods, let's just say they weren't exactly by the book. And working with the Mafia, not a good look.
So after all that, after all those risks, they just, what, pushed him aside?
Pretty much. He was quietly reassigned his role in Operation Underworld. Forgotten.
That's rough. And Lanza, did he ever have to face any consequences for, well, everything?
Lanza, yeah, his luck ran out. Remember those legal problems he had?
Yeah.
Yeah, those caught up with him. He ended up behind bars.
Wow, talk about irony. What about the mastermind of it all?
Oh,
Lucky Luciano.
Sure.
He was pulling strings from prison, right?
Oh, Luciano, he always landed on his feet. He used the whole Operation Underworld thing, spun it into this whole sob story about how he's a patriot, how he helped protect America, argued that he deserved a shorter sentence.
And it worked.
Let's just say he knew how to work the system. He was granted clemency.
No way.
Oh, yeah. But there was a catch.
There's always a catch.
He was deported. Back to Italy.
Wow. Back to where it all began. What did he do? Go back to being a mob boss.
Luciano, let's just say old habits die hard. Even in exile, he was still a powerful figure, still pulling strings.
This whole story is incredible. It just goes to show you never really know what's happening behind the scenes, do you?
You got that right. It makes you wonder what other secrets are still hidden away in the history books.
If you want to learn more about Operation Underworld, the book that this whole deep dive was based on is absolutely incredible. It reads like a thriller, but it's all true. And you can find a link in the show notes. Be sure to check it out. Every purchase helps support the show.
Seriously, you won't be able to put it down.
And there you have it, deep divers. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and most importantly, never take anything at face value.